Perfect. Oh, got one more joining. So hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Heath. I'm the Director of Study Abroad in the Office of Study Abroad here at the Webster Groves campus. And my office here, we work really closely with all of our different Webster Study Abroad programs. And we're very excited to be able to talk with you all today about some opportunities in Florence this summer. So through a partnership that Webster has with Kent State University in Ohio, we offer programs at Kent State Florence on a regular basis throughout the academic year in the fall and the spring. And then we also have opportunities in the summer. And this year there are two different sessions, a June session and a July session. And today we're really going to focus our attention in more on the June session opportunity. We actually have two Webster faculty here who are going to talk with you about some of the really exciting and unique courses they're going to be teaching this summer. So great. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And then actually, let me do introductions really quickly so you can know who is going to be presenting today. So again, I'm Kelly. Then we also have Tyler Warland. Some of you may know Tyler already. He's our study abroad advisor in the Office of Study Abroad. He meets with a lot of students and helps them throughout the entire study abroad process. Then we also have Dr. Lindsay Kingston, who will be talking with you about her course on human rights and migration in Italy. And then we have Dr. David Wilson, who's going to talk to you about his course on Machiavelli that he'll be teaching. So wonderful. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Okay, awesome. Okay, so summer 2022. So I wanted to actually take a quick minute and just address the fact that study abroad has restarted this year. So I know with the pandemic, there were, things have definitely changed quite a bit, but starting in the fall of 21, we did start to relaunch study abroad programs, and we did send Webster students to Kent State Florence. And so we're continuing with that in the spring. We even have a spring break group going to Florence with the art department here, and then we'll continue that into summer. So of course there are some additional precautions we're taking, their testing requirements and things like that related to COVID, but we're very happy to say, that study abroad is happening again, and, helping students to pursue their interests all over the world. So welcome to Florence. So Florence is an excellent location for study abroad. It's a very manageable size city, about 400,000 people in the city itself. It's very walkable. And of course, it's well known for its beauty. It's actually the downtown of Florence. The historic center is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So amazing art, amazing architecture, a lot of history, especially as it relates to the Renaissance period. Florence is the capital of Tuscany. And again, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so it's very well known internationally for its history, its architecture, again, its art scene. Vibrant arts and culture scene. Of course, if you like food, the food there is fantastic. They're known for their wine and their olive oil, their leather goods too, for example. And of course, if you like art, there are some amazing museums, for example, the Accademia, the Uffizi, just to name a few. So really, Florence really is located in the heart of Italy, again, in the Tuscany region. You'll get a feel for both modern Florence and the Florence of the Renaissance, of course, when you go there, and you'll really have a chance to interact with locals and get a sense of what the Italian lifestyle is all about, but doing so in a city that's very safe and very manageable and easy to get to know and easy to explore. So you do get to know this beautiful and historic city, and you get to walk the same cobblestone streets as famous artists like Michelangelo, philosophers and physicists like Galileo and Dante. So just a couple words about Kent State Florence. So the program we're talking about today is through a partnership that Webster has with Kent State University. And we actually have been working with Kent State University since 2014. So they send their students on our Webster campuses, and then we in turn send our students with them. So it's a really nice partnership. It's reciprocal in nature. The Global Education Office at Kent State University provide a lot of support to not only us, all of our faculty and staff at Webster, but of course to a lot of our students going on the program. They do orientations, they do meetings with you before you go. They have a full on-site staff available. So they have a campus director, they have people who work in, student services and things like that. And then they do have a comprehensive academic and cultural program. So, and they have their own campus located really in the heart of Florence. So you do have an opportunity through this partnership to earn credit towards your Webster degree. So the credit transfers in directly. And Kent State does offer a number of really amazing field trips. So I know for this summer, or actually, sorry, for some of the summers in the past, they've done trips to Siena, to Venice, to Rome, for example. And they also do a lot of optional cultural activities. So things like cooking classes, going to a medieval rugby match, going on museum tours, going to soccer matches, things like that. So that's kind of all part of the program and the experience. And then I wanted to mention Palazzo Vittore. So that's actually the name of the Kent State campus. That's what they call it. And it's really in the downtown, very, very central Florence. If you're familiar with Florence at all, and if you know the Duomo, that's one of the main sites in Florence, sort of a terracotta, it's got a terracotta style roof, and it's a cathedral. So the campus is about a 5-minute walk from there. So again, it's very centrally located. And the campus has a full number of amenities. So they have things like, of course, classroom spaces, studios, biology labs, a library, a computer lab, lounges. If you want to go and just hang out at the campus, you can. And they have a beautiful outdoor courtyard as well. And then with academics, so they do have quite a few different academic areas available. If you go in the summer, you're going to be taking typically 2 courses, so either 6 credits or 7 credits. Usually it's 7 credits if you take the language. Usually the language courses are 4 credits. So that would bump you up to an additional credit if you took a language course while you were there. All the courses are taught Monday through Thursday. So that's really neat because it allows you to have ample time on the weekends, long weekends, if you want to travel on your own. So, and then again, all the academic credit is accepted by Webster, so it's easily transferable. And some of the academic areas that are offered in the summer, it really spans. They're all listed on the Kent State website, but anything from anthropology to art to business to history to Italian to international relations and human rights to philosophy too, which we're going to talk about today, psychology, sociology. So it runs the gamut. So they have a pretty wide range of offerings in different areas. So I'm not going to talk about all of the offerings in particular detail today. We're really going to highlight the 2 that are being taught by our Webster faculty this summer, but I would encourage you to definitely check out the Kent State website for the full listings, and they have course descriptions that if you want to get a more of a sense of what the particular class is going to be focusing on. So I don't know, I'm kind of going through my slides here, but I don't know if any of my colleagues have anything they wanted to add, just generally about Kent State or about Florence itself as a city.
Well, I think we're biased, but I think David and I would agree that it's one of the most beautiful places in the world. But the campus is, it's in the middle of everything. And my students in the past have taken all sorts of different classes. So in fact, some of them took a food and culture class right before mine. So they would roll in having eaten all sorts of great food, and they were very sleepy for my class. And I was always very jealous, but you can take a lot of different courses. It's really interesting.
If you've never done a study abroad program before, you might feel a little scared about the whole process and about how you might end up in some place and be sort of at your wit's end and disoriented and not know what to do. This program is the very best thing you could do for your first study abroad program, because not only is Florence, as you say, Kelly, extremely manageable and it's sort of amazingly beautiful, but all within walking distance. But Kent State, our partner there, does such a brilliant job of professionally managing the whole thing in the Palazzo Vittore. You've got all the staff there that you need. You've got a lot of expertise, and you've got a lot of other students from a lot of other places that you can get to know. They're all very accessible. And as you can see with Lindsay already, it's a great faculty. So.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I will say I came to Webster from UCLA 20 years ago, and I'm sure this is part of Lindsay's story when she came from Syracuse. What was it, a dozen years ago? One of the real attractions of Webster was being at a place with a global reach, where we had connections and students at institutions all over the world. And I've been to all those institutions all over the world. I've taught at many of them. The Florence connection is the best. You know, it's really awesome. Of course, if the Vienna people were here right now, I'd be saying the same lie to them. But
Of course.
This is being recorded.
Whoops.
On tape.
Delete that.
Yeah, and I will say too, just to add on to that, that Kent State Florence has a long tradition of running their campus. It's actually 2022. They're going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot of history, a lot of expertise. They know the city well. Their faculty and staff, you know, are experts on Italy, are experts on Florence. So it's really, you're in good hands.
And you don't have to be able to speak Italian. It's great if you can, but you don't have to be able to speak Italian.
Tyler, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't think so. I think that's that's a pretty good summary, and yeah, I can let Lindsay and David talk more about their courses. So
Perfect. Okay, great. Then I'm going to turn it over to David.
So are we going to keep the display there, or are we going to be able to see everybody again?
Would you like me to stop sharing my screen?
Why don't we see all the students again?
Okay, perfect.
Possible.
I will stop sharing.
However you want to do it. I have no display available.
There we go. Okay.
So thank you very much. So Machiavelli, I won't say a lot. We don't really have this scripted. If you know anything about Machiavelli, you probably have an idea that he was an Italian, and you have an idea that he lied a lot. And that's the main thing that people know about Machiavelli. He was in the news a lot during the Trump era for a lot of good reasons, and he was in the room a lot for a few years before that, because the 500th anniversary of his famous book, The Prince, was in 2013. So he wrote that book in 1513. And some consider him to be the first modern political thinker. So he's most famous for this little book that's highly readable. He wrote it in Italian, in the vernacular Italian, but it's sort of written for the general public in a certain way. It's called The Prince. And it was a big departure for Machiavelli because there was a standard genre of little books called mirrors for princes that people wrote to provide advice for princes, or advice for kings, or advice for rulers. And all these little documents tended to say you should set an example to everyone else, and you should be a model of virtue, and you should be an example for how all of us should live our Christian lives. And Machiavelli basically said, well, that's perfectly good advice if everybody else is going to behave the same way. But if you want to succeed, you have to understand that most people aren't going to behave the same way. And so, yeah, be a model of Christian virtue insofar as possible. But the ultimate goal is to achieve your political aims. And so you need to outthink the other person in order to get to the results that you really want to get. In his case, the result that he wanted to really get to was a unified Italy. He thought that, the 100 city-states that made up Italy at the time should be unified, and it should become a single state, which didn't happen until 1860 or so. So it was a long time after that. So he's very famous for the Machiavellian sorts of leadership techniques that he proposes in this little book, The Prince. On the other hand, what people less know by Machiavelli is quite a few of his other works. The most philosophically significant work is called The Discourses, which is a big book that he wrote while he was no longer an important Italian official in Florence. He was so-called in exile after the Medici era. And he thought very reflectively in that book about what it takes to have a successful government and a successful state. And most people who study that work nowadays realize that within Machiavelli, we have the roots of the modern notion of democracy, that he actually is a much deeper and profounder thinker about not only how the leader is going to get his way or her way, but how the government should be constructed in order to be a successful government. So we find that book in the library of Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton and the founders of our country, with a lot of reflection about what it takes, philosophically speaking, to have a democracy. So it's another interesting thing that's a different angle of Machiavelli. The third thing about Machiavelli that I'll mention is very few people know this, but he was the most successful Renaissance playwright prior to William Shakespeare. So he wrote a very popular play during his time throughout all of Europe called The Mandrake Route, or La Mandragola. It was performed more than any other play in medieval time prior to Shakespeare. So it came out in, it was premiered in 1518 in a palace that's just down the street from the Palazzo Vittori. And we'll go down there and we'll see the palace, which is where the Medici were, and where it was actually premiered at a wedding. And Wallace Shawn did a translation of it in the 70s. I don't know if you know Wallace Shawn from The Princess Bride. And it was featured off Broadway with a star who later became a lot more famous. His name was Tom Hanks. And so we also pay attention to Machiavelli as a playwright. He's a remarkable, interesting, infuriating guy who had a lot of very, very interesting ideas, and they don't all fit together quite coherently, but it's always really entertaining and challenging. So we actually have students who are interested in the play do a staged reading of the play. For the other students. So that's another element that we bring into the course. So we'll have 16 sessions, but 6 of them are probably going to be field trips in which we go to different places where Machiavelli hung out. We go to a place 21 meters to the south, kilometers to the south, where he had an estate where, after he lost his job and was tortured and imprisoned for a period of time and was out of power, it's where he lived when he wrote the Prince and the Discourses and the Mandrake Route. And it's a fabulous place. The estate is still as it was when he lived there 500 years ago. The restaurant where he would go underground in the tunnels to eat is still there, and you can get great chicken under the brick there at the restaurant. And you can see Florence, 7 miles to the north, off in the distance, where he was aching to get back and to get into the swing of things as an ambassador and as a leader. And there are other places like that we get to go also. So that's just a little nutshell.
Great, thanks, David. Does anybody have questions for Dr. Wilson about his course?
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
What is your favorite part of the course? Which work do you like the best? That's kind of a really broad.
That's like if I had all my children here saying, okay, which one of us do you like the best?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Well, the one that actually the play is the one that scandalizes me the most, because I mean it's on the one hand really well known in Italy. Last time we were there teaching it, we had something go wrong with our TV, and the guy came up and he's trying to fix the TV, and the DVD was in that was playing an English translation of the play. And he said, "Oh, it's the Mandrake Route. I love it. I love it." It's all very well known, but it's highly scandalous and very, very bawdy. And in fact, I didn't want to get fired, and so I had to. So I didn't want students going back and telling their parents that they were doing this play. So I actually had an expurgated version. I said, "We're going to talk about this. We're going to take this part out. You need to know why we're taking this part out, so that when we're doing the public version, we're not going to be saying those things." He's very if you've heard the phrase in an ethics class, the end justifies the means. He takes a very extreme view of the end justifies the means in that play. So basically, there are a lot of highly comic and ribald situations that enable a guy to get into a position of having sex that he wants to have. And it involves Catholic officials doing things that are scandalous as well. You can see why it became very popular. The Prince is of course the most famous and the most infuriating of them all. The most interesting intellectually, I think, is the Discourses, because that's where he sits and he thinks really hard about, he takes this view, for example, that every law that's passed should have a sunset rule on it, so that after in one generation, which you take to be 33 years, that law expires and then a new law has to come into place, because you always need renewal, because things are constantly changing. And you make a law, or you set up an institution for today, and today's situations are not the same as tomorrow's situations. And if you know your American history, you know that this shows up again in Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson had the view that every law should have, he had a 19-year sunset rule on laws. And of course, that would be too tumultuous for us not to know, what laws are going to be in place in the future. But this understanding, when he thinks deeply about things, that the way we assess our political institutions cannot be divorced from our particular experience of today and the way things are today, and they will be differently understood in another 20 years or 30 years, is really important, and that's profound.
Thank you.
David, there's a question in the chat asking if the course is a critical look at Machiavelli, or is it just kind of learning about him and his work?
It's a critical work. You can't you can't read Machiavelli without being critical. I mean, there will be disagreements among the students in the class about everything in Machiavelli. I mean, if you go to Barnes and Noble and pick up, books about Machiavelli, everybody will start off by saying, there's a standard way that people think about Machiavelli, but I'm going to set you straight. And then they all have a different way of setting you straight about Machiavelli. And that includes the scholars as well. So we won't have we won't end up with an orthodox view of Machiavelli, because there really isn't one. What we'll end up with, I think, is an appreciation of a coruscatingly original thinker who wasn't necessarily highly systematic, but was extremely playful and in certain ways enigmatic, who believed very much in trying to speak the truth as he saw it at that particular moment, even though it may not agree with exactly the way he saw it the day before.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have questions?
Are there any translations of discourses or the prints or anything that you really don't recommend? So I feel like there's a lot of good translations out there,
Yeah.
but
I don't have any that I would steer you against. I have my own favorites but the main ones that I use are because I started using them a long time ago. And so I have all my markings in the marginal areas, and I kind of am comfortable with them. But there are, one of the key ideas in the Prince, for example, is the idea of virtue, where he says ultimately the most important thing for a leader, and he means a political leader, but you can transport that notion into corporate leadership or nonprofit leadership or university leadership. The most important element is the Italian word that he uses there is virtue, which is a sort of loose translation of the Latin word from which we get virtue, and the Greek word arete, which is excellence. And everybody disagrees about how to translate that word and about what it really means, and really and so a lot of the dispute about translations is going to be, well, George Bull says prowess, so maybe it should be prowess, or maybe it should be virtue, because there's something slightly misogynistic about it, and the word virtue has the word vir in it, which is manliness, right? So maybe we should maintain that. And so there's various disagreements about how to translate that. What it really means is doing whatever it is that is the best thing that can be done in order to achieve success under those circumstances. It's not a particular feature, it's a consistent ability to understand what's needed in a particular situation and succeed on that basis. So I don't have a fight with the various translations. I like the translations that are for the most part in the vernacular and easy to read.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, okay. Well, if there's no other questions, then we'll move on to having Dr. Kingston talk about her course. But if you guys think of any other questions you want to ask about the Machiavelli course, of course, you can put them in the chat, or we'll have some time later for questions as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lindsay. Go ahead.
All right.
Do you want me to share the presentation again, or did you have something you wanted to share?
Good. I can see all your faces, or most of your faces. Hi, everybody. Although I do love staring at the Duomo. That's a good way to start my day. So my name is Lindsay Kingston. I'm the director of the Human Rights Program at Webster. And I know some of you are coming from St. Louis and some of you are from Leiden and Geneva and different places. So you may or may not have seen me around. But the course I'm teaching is called Human Rights and Migration in Italy. It's coded for the International Relations Program, but also for human rights. So if you were interested in human rights major, minor, or certificate, it counts for that too. And it's really, I think, a great study abroad opportunity, especially because we've all been kind of cooped up with the pandemic. And this, for some of us, might be our first chance studying abroad because of everything that's going on. I should mention, if you are eligible for Webster's airfare scholarship, this is something that qualifies. A lot of times these shorter term things don't, but because this is considered a term and it's at one of our partner campuses, your airfare could be covered. So that's pretty great. But my course looks at the issues of migration and human rights in the Mediterranean region. I'm sure you've seen news about this. We have this issue where people are coming from really all sorts of different parts of the world, but they kind of make their way over to North Africa, in particular to Libya, and they try to make their way up to places like Greece and Malta and Italy over the Mediterranean, which is an incredibly, incredibly dangerous sea crossing, facilitated by a lot of not super nice people, a lot of human smugglers and human traffickers. And this is really a crisis throughout Europe. We've seen this exacerbated with conflict in the African continent, in the Middle East, Syria. So if you're coming from the American perspective, it's interesting because there are a lot of interesting and heartbreaking parallels between what's happening in the Mediterranean and what's happening at the US-Mexico border. And in fact, governments are learning from each other, and not always in very human rights protective ways, about how to, quote, deal with these refugees and asylum seekers and migrants. So the course really looks at that. I'm a human rights scholar, and my specialty is in citizenship and migration. And I'm also Italian American. I'm a dual national, parlo italiano. I spend a lot of time in Italy. In fact, I'm going next month for a research trip. So this is really near and dear to my heart. And we're able to take advantage of the location in Florence to really talk to some really interesting people. So for example, we walk right down the street, there's a UN research office, the Office of Innocenti, which it works on issues related to the rights of children. So we talk a lot about how migration is getting in the way of things like your right to education and your right to basic health care for kids. We do site visits, like we have a great relationship with Oxfam, which is a big global anti-poverty organization. And we will connect with them to take tours of Florence that are led by migrant activists. And so we learn about the history of the city through the lens of migration to figure out how have migrants changed certain parts of the city, and how is Florence constantly changing because of migration, because it's a big issue in Italy. We also look back in history. So we go to the Great Synagogue of Florence and we talk about how Italian Jews were rounded up and deported during the Holocaust. They were deported from the main train station in Florence, and there's a plaque there. Those people never made it home. So there's a lot of different facets of migration, and Florence is a big center of that. So yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about this. I'm also really big into student faculty research. So if you thought maybe this could be a cool jumping off point, a thesis later down the line, I'm happy to talk to you about that. But it's just a really great opportunity to do this sort of work and to make some really great connections too. I will note, for those who don't maybe know how all of this works, has anybody been to Florence before? Okay, I see a couple hands and nods. Florence is a great city, but it's also a very popular one. And so finding an apartment in Florence in the summer is not the most fun thing. And so the great thing about this program is it's taken care of for you. So Kent State organizes this. You have these great apartments, really centrally located. but they're not student housing. They're not dorms. They're like regular apartments that people in Florence live in, like regular people. And there's a lot of value to that, I think, in terms of just understanding what it's like to live in Florence. David and I don't have that luxury, so we'll have to find our own places. So wish us luck. But it's also a great place if you want to travel around the rest of Italy. You can get on that train. They have fast trains to the big cities like Rome and Venice and things like that. But you can also go to smaller towns. So students and I, we went to Lucca. We stopped by to see Pisa because we all had to take our pictures holding the Leaning Tower up, obviously. Kent State organizes trips if you're maybe a little nervous about going off on your own. I know if you're at a European campus, trains are probably nothing to you, but for Americans, this is a really new thing. So I know Kent State, I was just talking to them a week ago. They're organizing a trip to Siena, which is gorgeous. They're going to organize a trip to Rome. Those are optional, but if you want to go with the group, that's out there for you. So I think it's great. I'm super biased, but we're excited you're here. And does anybody have questions? They're all convinced. I've also tried like 30 gelato places in Florence. I have strong recommendations.
Yep.
I have done field work in advance to prepare for this opportunity.
Right.
Hello, I have a question just about like the price of like cost of living there. Just how expensive is it in like day-to-day life?
It depends how your day-to-day life works. I will say in general, Italy is, the cost of living is pretty reasonable, but of course, when you're in cities in the summer with tourists, it gets higher. If you want to eat out every meal, it's going to be more. But in terms of like, you're going to have a kitchen, you know, going to the grocery store, they have marketplaces where you can get fresh fruit and all that good stuff. So it's actually, it can be pretty affordable. So if you have a student budget, I think it's definitely doable. The trains in Italy don't cost very much. Florence is a walkable city. You definitely won't have to worry about taking like taxis and stuff everywhere. So in that regard, I think it's doable. So if you're comparing it to a place like Geneva, for example,
Yeah.
it's going to be so much cheaper than
Yeah.
being in Geneva.
Yeah, I agree. And you really can't find a bad meal. So if you, I mean, this is Italy after all. So, and there are a lot of places that are just not expensive at all. So if you walk into an inexpensive lunch place, you could get a really great meal for not very much at all. And there, as Lindsay says, there are Conad grocery stores all over the place where you can do your shopping, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And it's really easy to take buses out into the countryside, and they have a local bus system that is easy to navigate and very inexpensive. And you can start at the bus station, or you can start at a pickup stop somewhere and just launch out into the countryside as well.
Yeah, and if you would like to talk to students who've studied abroad in Florence recently, we can always put you in touch to get kind of their take on, you know, studying on a student budget in Italy, and, you know, cost saving measures and things like that. And then I also put in the chat a link to the cost sheet for the program. And we do have a kind of an area where we give an estimate for your estimated expenses, and that's about $1,500 for the summer session. So again, everybody's different with how they manage their money, but that's kind of something that we typically recommend that students take over with them for meals and entertainment and travel.
I also saw there's a question about the size of classes. That's determined by Kent. So I can't 100% say what their cap is. And Kelly, maybe you know that, but last time I taught, it was very similar to like an upper level class at Webster. I think I had maybe 10 students in my class. So they're not giant classes by any means. And the classrooms in the Palazzo they're not giant classrooms. So I think they're probably pretty comparable to what you have at your campus at Webster.
Just to fill that out, I had 18, I think, the last time I taught there, which seemed a little on the high side. But it's sort of a little on the high side for Webster, St. Louis also. So yeah, it's pretty normal.
Yeah, I think between 10 to 20 is probably normal.
Right.
And in class, you'll be with, you know, potentially other Webster students, Kent State students. They also have a range of different universities they partner with in the US and internationally. So it can be kind of a neat mix of students.
Right.
Great. Any other questions? Perfect. Okay. Well, I'm going to try. I realized Tyler let me know that my presentation wasn't really moving forward to the slides. So sorry about that. I'm going to try to share my screen again because I do have just a couple more quick slides to kind of recap and to go over some information we think that'll be helpful to everybody. So I'm just going to try to share again, see if it works better this time. I'm going to try to share it in PowerPoint actually. Okay, I know that's probably the same. No, can you guys see a slide that says welcome to Florence?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, cool. Can you see one that has 3 different pictures?
Yes.
Okay, these are the ones I went over before when I was speaking. And then we have David's course and Lindsay's course. And now I'm going to get to the items that have not been covered yet, although I think we've talked quite a bit about housing, which is, I think Lindsay did a great job with that. So one of the neat things about this program, and we've heard both from Kent State and from students on the program, this is kind of one of the, like, their favorite features of the program actually is the housing. So you get to live in local apartments that are sort of scattered throughout the city. So you're not living in like a residence hall or anything like that. All the apartments are different. They work with like a local leasing agency that helps to identify different apartments. And usually it's between 2 to 8 students living in an apartment. And typically you're in a shared bedroom. So you'll have, one roommate that's sharing your room, but then you'll have other roommates that are sharing kind of the whole apartment. So again, they get them all throughout the city. It's a very neat way to experience like kind of the Florentine lifestyle, because you could have an Italian family below you. You could have Italian college students living next to you. You're hearing Italian being spoken around you every day. So you really get to, get a sense of what it's like to live in Italy and experience that Italian lifestyle. So they are fully furnished apartments. And again, the furniture will just depend on the apartment that you get. And they're usually pretty close walking distance to the campus. I think they said like 5 to 10 minutes walking. So, should be very easy for you to just get to class and just have that very short commute. So great. That's pretty much all about housing. And let's see what else. Oh, so we talked a little bit about costs, and I did share that cost sheet with you guys. So we have a kind of an interactive cost sheet on our website where you can like sort of start to build the overall cost of the program. So you will pay tuition per credit hour. So we have a new summer rate. So that amount, we put the amount for 6 credits, the amount for 7 credits. And sorry, these amounts are based on Webster US rates. So if you're a student at an international campus, your rates could be different. Although Tyler, I think with this program, we've always had students pay the St. Louis rate.
Yes, that's correct.
Correct. Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting, so we would have you pay the rates that you see up here, regardless of your campus. So my apologies, my bad for what I said there initially. Then there's a study abroad fee that's $275. So that's primarily going to cover your international insurance. We give students a travel adapter, a t-shirt, so some things come out of there. So it kind of covers the administrative costs that Webster has for sending students abroad. And then there's, because of the difference in what Kent State charges for tuition and what Webster is charging for the tuition this year, we actually do have to charge a supplemental tuition fee to make those amounts match up. So that's one of the items on our cost list. And then housing is $900. And then there's a program fee for $800 that includes things like some local transportation, your different program activities, some of the administrative costs, course fees and things like that for textbooks and photocopies and things like that. So, so that's $800. And then your meals and personal expenses are not included in what you would be billed for. So it's just important to think about how much to take with you to cover those kinds of expenses. And I mentioned that $1,500 amount previously. But if you want to travel like all over Europe, then maybe you should budget to take more money with you. So just something to think about. And I did want to mention that we do have scholarships for summer study abroad. So you might be looking at these costs and think, oh, it is a lot of money. But we do have scholarships for students. So I think Lindsay mentioned the Webster World Traveler Program. So that's for Webster students. It would cover the cost of your round trip airfare. So that's available. And then in addition to that, there's a range of different study abroad scholarships that you can apply for. They are merit-based and need-based. So you have to have some level of financial need. Most students have need in the summer. So I would definitely encourage, you to look into those. They're all listed out on the study abroad website. And usually the average award for summer, I'd say was between $2,000 to $3,000. So it's not going to cover all of your costs, but it could put a good, dent in what you do have to pay. So, and then just the deadline is February 28th. That's the deadline for all summer programs. It is a 2-part application process. So you would need to apply with Webster, and then you would apply. So we kind of get you through the Webster process, get you, accepted by Webster, and then you also would be doing the Kent State application, which is, they're both online applications. And I think the Kent State deadline is March 1st. So there's kind of a tight turnaround. So, but we'll work with you on that as soon as you have your, you started your application at all. And the application is open. So if you want to start your application, if you haven't done that yet, absolutely, you can go ahead and do that. You can access it through the Webster Study Abroad website, just webster.edu/study abroad. And that will take you into the application. And then if you have any questions, we have Tyler, who's on the call today, or the meeting today. So there's his email address. You can schedule appointments with him through Calendly. That's kind of an automated appointment system. Jennifer Dickey works with our WIN students, so our non-Webster students. If any of you are at an international campus, you have your coordinator at your campus too, who works with study abroad, so feel free. They're very knowledgeable. My contact information isn't up here. I'll put my email in the chat, but if anyone has any questions for me, please do not hesitate to reach out. I always love hearing from students, so I'll put that in there as well. But I'll stop sharing my screen now. Did anybody have any questions about any of the information I covered, or anything, that we've talked about today, or that we didn't talk about that you're curious about? Let me see if we missed anything in the chat. No, I think we got everything. Tyler, did you want to add anything?
No, I don't think so. I think it's important to notice we do have a bit of flexibility on our end generally, but Kent State has kind of a fairly firm March 1st deadline. And because February 28th is a day before March 1st, you kind of need to be in the sooner, the better, because you have to have a Kent State login to be able to apply as a guest student, which takes like 24 to 48 hours. So really, don't plan on starting your application on February 28th if you need to apply. I know that there's a few people here who are not Webster students. So I'm going to put a link in the chat here too. I see Jennifer's here, but she just sent me a message that she's just got a phone call right now and can follow up with anybody if you have questions. But here's a link to instructions of how to apply as a non-Webster student. So in our system, you have to log in with a Webster ID so you can apply as a non-degree seeking student. For Webster, the application's free. It just gives you a Webster email, student ID, username, and password to be able to log into our system. So the instructions to do that are there at that link.
Can I also add a quick thing, just because I know with COVID, a lot of people's plans have been so delayed and messed up. So if you are a senior or you have a friend who's graduating soon but would really like to study abroad, I just want to stress that you could still do that, or they could still do that. So basically the process is you petition to graduate, but instead of saying May, you say August 2022. You still walk at commencement, you still do everything like normal, except you're still technically a student until August. So that piece of paper, that diploma, will say August instead of May, but nobody really cares about that. So just kind of a pro tip, if somebody's thinking, oh, I'm a senior, I'm graduating, I can't study abroad, you actually can. We just have to be a little sneaky about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point, Lindsay, because we have had quite a few students whose plans have been delayed because of the pandemic. And so a number of them are looking to study abroad in the summer and are doing just that exact same thing, like walking in May, but then getting their degree conferred after they participate and study abroad. So it's definitely, that's great you mentioned, it's definitely an option.
I noticed that somebody just asked the question, do you have to be an undergraduate student somewhere in order to apply? I know that there is an option on the Kent State website of applying as a guest student when you're not a student anywhere else. I don't know if there's a mechanism for doing that via Webster, but I know there is a mechanism for doing that via Kent State.
Exactly.
Do you know, Kelly, anything else about that?
If that's your case, if you're not currently enrolled as an undergraduate student at a university, yeah, there potentially is still an option for you to go abroad with Kent State Florida this summer. In that case, you'll just want to reach out to the Global Education Office at Kent State, and they can help facilitate that process. And if you're not sure how to get in touch with them, let us know, because we can help direct you to the right person over there.
Right, and be sure and let Lindsay or me know if you do that, because we get special credit if through our efforts somebody applies to Kent State. And if you just apply to Kent State and don't give us credit, then we won't get our special bonus. It's not, we don't get any money for it, but we do get
By bonus, he means we get to come with you.
we get to come. We get to come. We have to recruit our own number of people in order to make this work. So give us credit for it. If you go straight to them, just say, Lindsay sent me or David sent me, and then it's okay.
Nice, yes.
Okay.
And I do see a question in the chat about the Webster scholarships. So the ones that I mentioned, those are for Webster students. Those are not for outside students from other universities. However, if your university participates in the WINS network, the Webster International Network of Schools, we do have what we call a WINS award that will cover up to $1,000 of your airfare. So that's a great feature that we have. And then we also recommend, check with your own study abroad office. A lot of universities have their own study abroad scholarships that they offer only to their students, or there's national awards too you can consider. Like, I don't know if anyone has heard of the Gilman Scholarship. It goes out to students who are Pell Grant recipients, but that's a national congressionally funded award that's available nationally, any student, any university. So and we have a list of national awards on our website as well. So that's also something that could be looked at. Great. Okay. Unless there's any other questions, we'll just go ahead and maybe just check the chat one more time. I think we got everyone's questions. Perfect. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. This is awesome. Thank you so much for joining today. And I'm really glad you're considering, this program. There's still plenty of time to apply. Feel free to reach out at any time to any of us here today if you have questions or concerns or need help. We're always available to jump in and answer any of your questions. So feel free to use us as resources. Great. And everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.